Hi, everyone. Rich Berliner here from 5th Gen Media and our publication Charged Up. This morning, I'm with Jyoti Suri, and Jyoti is with Global Transmission Report, and we're going to discuss the upcoming conference in New York that they're doing. Plus, we're going to talk about Global Transmission Report and what it does. And Jyoti, good morning and welcome. Thank you for being with me today.
Thank you so much, Rich. A very good morning to you as well, and thank you for having me over this podcast. Really looking forward to our conversation today. As you said, I'm Jyoti Suri. I represent Global Transmission Report, and Global Transmission Report I would say, is in the business of providing information and analysis on the global electricity transmission industry. I'm the chief of content there, and I was actually among the very first ones to start this in 2008. And I can proudly say that we've come a long way. And I'm really looking forward to this podcast with Rich. And thank you, Rich, for including us in this. And, as you said that this is the launch one. And I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
Great. So, I was saying before in prep for this that the company named Global Transmission Report isn't sort of a logical name for an EV conference operator, but obviously it's related to the rest of your business. So tell us about Global Transmission Report, what you do for a living, quote unquote, and how it developed that you are doing these electric vehicle charging conferences now.
Yeah. So, yeah, you rightly said that if one were to think about EV charging infrastructure and try to relate it to global transmission, they may not be able to see the link, but there is a link. We started in 2008, and we are basically in the business of providing information, research, and analysis on the transmission industry. And we do this through our industry reports, newsletters, and events, of course. If you will remember, the mid-2000s was a time when the energy sector was undergoing a massive transformation. Many regions were, moving away from that that model of vertically integrated utilities to a more, disaggregated approach and they were unbundling generation from transmission and distribution. And that's when, the challenges of managing our grids were emerging. And then we saw that there was perhaps a need to focus on transmission as a specialized sector of the larger electricity industry. And that's how we were born. We started focusing on transmission. And over the years, we realized that we cannot talk about our grids. Our grids have become very important. Again, transmission still remains very interlinked with the other parts of the electricity industry, as now we are moving away from fossil fuels to producing more renewable and clean energy. We have to really look at how we view our electricity grids. And in this whole transition, grids have become very important. I would say, in my opinion, grids were so far kind of a blind spot in our energy transition journey. Surprisingly, they were not getting enough attention, but our aim is to bring that attention back to our grids because they are an important part of our infrastructure.
Yeah, and that makes so much sense. And I'm not trying to pat you on the back, but that really does make a lot of sense that these things dovetail together. Because again, in the United States, so much discussion has been had about the mandates for electric vehicles are wonderful, and the money that they're shoveling at the industry is wonderful. But at the end of the day, can the grids handle it? Can the industry handle not only generating enough electricity, but transmitting it? So where are you in terms of helping people? What's the goal with the company? Are you looking to help people figure that out, to point out things to people? Where's your position in helping folks on the transmission side?
Absolutely. So as I said that we focus on grids, and we closely monitor all the trends and developments that are taking place in the electricity industry, and especially on the grid side. And I believe that electrification of transportation is one of the biggest shifts that is happening within the electricity sector today. And when we are talking about EV charging infrastructure, we are always focusing on how to build those charging stations. We are not still thinking about how it's going to impact our grids. Are our grids ready to take on the extra load? So this is where we are seeing the electricity and the mobility sectors converging. And we wanted to, and when we realized that it's important to talk about EV charging in the context of the grids, and if you will look at our agendas, we bring in our regulators, we bring in our utilities, we bring in our developers to have that collaborative discussion that how are we looking at building that infrastructure? Are we looking at it, do we have the whole picture in front of us? Or we are just focusing on, oh no, we need to build this charging station there, but how are we going to provide that electricity? We are facing so many challenges there. And that's the idea. That's how this whole idea of doing a very focused conference on just the charging infrastructure part of it, that when we discussed and we launched it 6 years ago, and we've got a great response because we are very focused on one particular aspect of the industry.
So let's, my background, Jyoti, is in telecommunications. So let's
Yeah.
address the elephant in the room that I'm sure is on your desk and your mind every single day, which is data centers. And data centers, to me, are even a bigger issue than just electric vehicle charging for the transmission and the generation businesses. So the ability for the future of AI to really develop revolves around having enough electricity and the transmission capability for the data centers, this massive amount of new capacity that's coming on. And what is your position? What is Global Transmission Report and your thoughts on the data center part of this? And will there be a Rich Berliner Global Transmission Report conference about data centers in the future?
You just really talked about the most challenging topic right now in the industry. I completely agree with you. Data centers, we need to think about it. There is going to be a huge demand of electricity from the data centers. I think in one of the reports that I was reading, going forward, which are the biggest industries from which will demand electricity is one, of course, the heavy manufacturing. It's not happening right now with heavy manufacturing. It will be another 10 years or so because there's also hydrogen in play there. Next comes data centers, then comes transportation and other industries. So you rightly said data centers, given the amount of AI we're going to use in the future. So how are we addressing that? We are closely looking at that. And data centers is one of the themes that we want to cover in our 2022 conferences. You will see soon an announcement.
2022? You didn't mean
2025. 2025.
there you go.
Sorry about
Right.
that. And yes, 2025. And then you will see an announcement coming out from our side very soon, and that we'll be doing a conference on data centers.
I'll wait for my my commission check on that.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. But I
Yeah.
think that's incredibly prescient in
Yeah.
this situation. And because I think the unrealistic nature of the political class in our country about just throw more on the heap of electric, get rid of all this natural gas and all this other stuff. And wind will provide as much power as we need, and solar will provide. And I think it's very short-sighted because we have to think in a more global setting of how we're going to generate and transmit power for not only electric transportation, but for data centers. And right now, it seems to me with the slow pace of what's happening with the NEVI program here in the US and some of the other charging issues, data center has risen to the top. So I think it's wise to be looking at that as a part of your business. But I think it's very important for us to bring that to the forefront for people at these EV conferences. I think it's just, massively important.
Yes. I think it is, if I was reading right, then even FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, they are going to announce a conference in the fall where they're looking at how to address this challenge of providing enough electricity for the needs of these data centers. I don't want to quote, but one of the states in the US have already like kind of raised their hands and they're saying, okay, fine, now they can't deal with it. They're already seeing, a lot of challenges around being able to cater to the needs that these data centers are demanding going forward. And yeah, we really need to address this challenge before it becomes a big issue for an industry. And it's just not, the people who are building these data centers, who are operating these data centers, our grids, our utilities have to really, factor in the demand that is going to be generated from these data centers in their planning for the future grids and all. Yes.
Yeah. I've been really interested, and let's just concentrate for a second on the conferences themselves. But I've been really interested in the fact that when I went and met you in 22, each year the conference seems to get bigger and bigger. And I assume from what I've read so far from you, this year's will be by far the biggest conference that's happened in this New York event that's coming up. And so it seems like people are, I have a friend who's coming from Canada to this event to be there in New York because it's the sort of premier event for if you're in the electric vehicle charging business. One of the aspects that's interesting and I see happening is a lot of the folks that I know from the wireless communications business are jumping over into doing work in the EV charging space. And so that's a kind of the conference for them is really sort of combination coming out party and learning experience and making your bones, if you will, in the business. What are your thoughts on the growth of this? Are you looking at growing these things just bigger and bigger and bigger?
Yes, absolutely. The growth in the attendance itself reflects the importance of the industry. And as energy transition accelerates, we see this trend to continue. And first of all, I would also like to thank your friend who's coming down from Canada. I'd like to meet him and host him. And thank you so much that he's joining us. This just makes us really, proud of what we are producing and, are able to deliver. And I said this trend is just going to continue. In any industry, with any industry, this happens that, there are lows and ups and downs. All industries will go through that. And but right now, EV charging, EVs is looking, everyone's looking at EVs right now because there's tremendous potential. There's tremendous potential in many segments of the EV industry. And we're expecting a big attendance this year as well.
Yeah. And so it's funny, I moderated a conference in 22 when I met you. My style in doing these moderating these panels is to keep the audience awake because that's a real problem in these things
We
sometimes.
quite enjoyed that panel. Even the panelists on the panel, they were quite happy about it.
Thank you.
You remember
Yes.
that,
So,
yeah.
I asked at that point, and I still ask, and we will bring that back, again when I do the moderating at this conference is anybody making money yet? And you mentioned that there's a lot of money being sloshed around in the business, and there's a lot of money to be made. I'm just curious whether you focus at all on the health and the financial health of companies in this, given the fact that it's tough to make money in certain aspects of this business. What's your thought on that?
Yeah. In what I think is that any new technology, when it's introduced, it has to go through a certain rigor, to a certain, there's a pace at which it develops, it's introduced, it's accepted. So it happens with any new technology, even with mobile phones. You're very familiar with that industry. In the beginning, there were none. There was a bloodbath, right, with most of the telecom providers. There was mergers, acquisitions, and then came the stability, and then came the real growth. And then so I think any new technology, when it's introduced, it takes its time. But the good part is when the technology means good to you, when it is it's beneficial for the people. The important part is that we keep the momentum on, and that's what we are seeing here in EV industry as well. It's not easy. We've already seen this year in 2024, we've seen so many companies either merging or going bankrupt and all that. Some of the EV charging providers have gone bankrupt. There have been sales also, so that will continue. That is not that it's not going to be there, but a stability will come, and then we'll see the money coming as well.
It's funny. We're in such a technology business with transmission, with charging, with electric vehicles, with even mobile phones. It's not very different from farming. If you think about farming, first you have to prepare, then you have to plant, and finally you get to reap. And that's when you make money. Not until
Absolutely.
you get to
Absolutely.
actually reap the crop, and put the crops to market, and that's when you make money. And it's no different in the tech business. You have to do research and development for many, many years, and finally you get a product and you can go and sell it. So, well, I won't keep you much longer because I think you've covered, so much of what I wanted to talk about and to know, and I want this to be sort of a way for people to understand more about why these conferences and attending them are so important, because finding out what's going on in the business is the lifeblood of any business. And frankly, in the EV charging space, we're all new businesses. So our little piece of this is the Charged Up newsletter that we're doing. And, we were so happy to have been involved with you in promoting the shows and working with you on that. And, we will continue to produce Charged Up, so that, between things like conferences that you're doing, people get information and news and finding out what's going on in the business. And we think that's really an important part of the ecosystem of the EV charging space. So, but I look forward to seeing you in New York in
Thank you,
a month or
Rich.
so. And if there's anything else that you would like to do, we did, we ran a story, not this week, but previous week, about the show itself. And we really want very much to support it because we think this is such an important part of the process. What we do in terms of disseminating news, what you do in terms of having these conferences, I think is, just so important. And I thank you for taking the time to chat with us today. And I look forward to seeing you in a month or so.
Thank you, Rich. Same here. And I really appreciate the wonderful work Charged Up is doing in dissemination of, education, whether it's, educating the people or disseminating information about EV charging. That's very important.
Great. Thank you. We've been talking to Jyoti Suri from Global Transmission Report today, and such an important part of developing an industry. Again, from telecommunications, I remember going to trade shows in the past where there were 16 people at the first events, which ultimately got to a 40,000 person trade show many years later. So this is very similar in terms of the starting of the process of turning this into really more and more important resource for people in the industry. Jyoti, thank you so much. We'll talk to you again soon, and we'll see you in a month.
Thank you for your time. See you in a month. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.